Hi, I'm RC Jim, and I want to share with you a little bit today about my quest to find the ideal Buddybox system to use with Radiomaster. It's not been entirely successful. I'll say that right from the start. The end result is great, but nonetheless, several attempts along the way just simply did not work for me. For those things, some of you may have gotten them to work, and I would love to hear your ideas about them. But, of course, the Buddybox, you have a system where you've got a master radio, a instructor radio that is connected with a model, but it also has a receiver in it that is receiving the signal from the student radio. Whenever the instructor wants the student to have control, he holds a switch, and the student has complete control. As soon as the instructor lets go of the switch, the instructor has control. So that's the basic concept. Now with Radiomaster, what makes this possible is if you got a 4-in-1 module, that 4-in-1 module can also act as a receiver, not just simply as a transmitter. So you can have the 4-in-1 module act as a receiver, and then have an external module plugged onto the back of it act as the transmitter to send the signal to the plane. So that's the basic concept. Now, in terms of the various methods of doing that, what I started out with was using ELRS. And I just simply had the ELRS module on the back of it, had that connected to the plane, had the 4-in-1 module receive the signal. Worked simple and worked great, but it required an ELRS receiver on the plane. And for a lot of students, they'll be wanting to fly their own plane, and they're probably not going to start with the ELRS. And so that's probably not the greatest solution, but it worked. Okay, the next thing, I saw that there was this thing called a wireless training module that you could get from Radiomaster. And with it, it's basically just an empty box, but it's got some connectors in here that you can use to connect a receiver. And receivers can be extremely small. This is a receiver here. So they can be very small and just fit into this box, and you can either have the antenna inside there or dangle it out through a hole, whatever you want to do. But that seemed like a really good solution, and you just have to have a receiver that has an S-bus output. So that seemed like a good thing, and I had two different options with that. With Radiomaster, they suggest if you're using two Radiomaster radios that you use their R81 receiver, and that receives a First Sky D8 signal, which the 4-in-1 module can send out, and of course this will receive that. So that's one option. Then I found that I was looking for something that would handle a DSMX signal, because that's a very popular thing in our club. A lot of people use the Spectrum radios. And so I found this one on the internet, and El Cheapo sort of a thing. But the problem with this one is that this little module here puts out 5 volts, and this one needs 3 to 3.6 volts. So with that one, what I had to do is I had to use a step-down board here. It's a little, I don't know if you call it a power regulator, but it's a little chip that steps the voltage down. And so that gives me about 3.3 volts to go into the receiver. And we still have our signal out. So that all seemed to be a good thing to do. This, by the way, is the R81 Radiomaster receiver. So again, very, very small. This one has diversity antennas, not that you need it for receiving a training signal. So anyway, those are some solutions there. And then the final solution, and the one that I ended up using, is using a second 4-in-1 module on the back. And so this allows me to use the internal module to receive the signal from the student radio, and it allows with that to have a whole bunch of different formats that can be for the student radio to to receive a signal. Not as many formats as the sending out the signal, but there's several different ones. And most notably, it does include the DSMX. And then I can use the 4-in-1 module on the back to control the radio, and that control the plane. And that has, of course, lots and lots of different formats that can be used that way. So the most flexible, I think, of all of the systems. The one thing that I can't handle with what I've got here is if the student did decide to go with ELRS right from the start, I don't have an ELRS receiver. But you could put that into this little box here, and you could do it that way. Now, that's the overall big picture about the thing. Now, what about the hassles? Well, first off, there's a couple key things that you need to know that they don't necessarily tell you. With a Radiomaster TX16s, you need to use port A on this S-Bus trainer module, not B. Yeah, I got to use A. Secondly, when you go to set it up, you would think that since this is an external module, that you would need to use have the external module turned on. Not the case.
Instructor has control.
Okay, as you look at your menu here, and as you have the different things that you can set up, naturally you have to set up the trainer function. But when you're using the external S-Bus module, you turn the external RF off. You don't have that on, you turn that off. And that has to be off in order to get this master S-Bus module choice here. So that's what you're doing. This is the master radio. It's using an S-Bus module. That is what sets up the external module on this particular option, not the external RF. That's different than if I'm using just a normal set of ELRS or the 4-in-1 module. With either of those, you'll be setting up the module in the external RF. So that's just how it happens to be. Okay, now, next little thing, probably most of you already know this, but it wasn't something that I knew. With most of these little tiny S-Bus receivers, what you have to do to bind it is you have to hold in the bind plug, and it'll be just a little tiny little thing that can push down. So this one is in the corner, and this other one, it's on the side. Okay, that little thing right there, probably kind of hard to see, but just a little tiny thing that you click down. But you have to hold that down, and while it's being held down, you connect the power. And that's what puts it into the bind mode. For this one, they suggest 3 seconds. For this little this little DSMX one, it just happens pretty well instantly. Now, the next item is probably not something that is going to be a problem for you, but I bought these little connectors. Yeah, I don't know what they call that connector, but the connector that's needed for this S-Bus module, I bought some of those off the internet. But look how they have the wires connected. I didn't notice this at first. Okay. We've got yellow, black, red. Black, the negative, the ground, is always on the outside, opposite to the yellow. It doesn't go in the middle. So what did I do? I wired this thing up based on the colors, which gave it opposite polarity, and I think I fried it. So I wasn't able to get that to work, and I'm pretty sure that that's what happened. The other issue with this is that it comes without the wires connected. So you have to do the soldering on there, and it's a pretty delicate job to solder those wires and stay away from the chip. I think I did okay with that, but nonetheless, a rather tricky job there. Whereas this one, the wires came attached to the actual receiver, and I just had to connect wires to other things. Although with my little step-down thing, I did have to solder on there, but they're nice big lugs coming out of that one. Okay, so this one I think I've fried, and since I got a better solution, I'm not going to try that again, but given it's the recommended solution, I'm sure that one will work if you don't hook up your wires wrong. Okay, this guy here, the strange thing with it is that I can get it to bind, but what happens is if I've got this plugged into the radio, even without the student transmitter turned on, my radio announces that the student has been connected. If I bind this, I get the message, student connected, student signal lost, right away. Okay, we are flashing. We then bind.
Trainer connected. Trainer signal lost.
So there must be something about this particular receiver that maybe the signal format is different as to what it sends out. Because if it's just simply powered up without being connected to another radio, my radio, the transmitter, thinks it's been bound, you know. But when I actually bind it, it starts out saying, oh yeah, everything's fine, because that's the sort of thing it does before it gets bound. But the moment the binding is completed, then it loses the signal. So that particular one, in case you want to be alerted to it, one that I got on AliExpress, it's a S801S S-Bus, compatibility DSM2, DSMX. Whether that's not actually an S-Bus signal going out or whether there's something else that's wrong with it, I don't know. I have connected the polarity right with it. It does have has a yellow light that is flashing. The yellow light is flashing when it's powered up, and then when it's bound, it's a yellow light that's solid. Okay, so let's have a look at what we need to do to set up the radio when we've got an external module such as the 4-in-1 module on the back that we're going to communicate with to the plane. So I selected our plane here. We go to our system menu, and there's a trainer function in here. So in the trainer, we've got to select something here, and basically I'd recommend replace. Your option is add, replace, or off. Add is just simply going to add on whatever you put into a stick in addition to what the student has in the stick. And if the student is going one way, you might be going the opposite way to correct it, but the student doesn't have a clue as to what's going on. So just use replace for all of them. If you need to change the channel order, you can do that here. And normally everything would be on 100%. Okay, so we've got the system menu taken care of. Now we go to our model menu, and you could do this in the system menu, but we want to do it in the model menu because you don't want all this stuff going on for other planes where you don't have a student. You don't want the thing to be telling you student has control and all that type of thing when it's not needed. So these three last things are the things that you need. Of course, to add them, you just go to the plus to add in a new one. And just take whichever number it gives for the next one in line. Doesn't make any difference what that SF number is. So you need to give it a trigger. I use the momentary trigger because I find that in the flurry of the moment when something's going wrong, if I've used a switch that is in a fixed position, it's too easy for me to get confused as to which way that's supposed to go or whatever else, you know. So the better thing to do for me, and it's a personal preference, but for me, just go ahead and hold that thing as long as the student has control. And when you need to do something, then naturally you let go and you take control. Okay? So all you got to do is let go and take control. And that's a very quick sort of response. Now, when you got a student that is better and you basically are spending the whole flight just simply holding a switch, That's where people like to have the switch that is fixed. But yeah, I've tried it both ways, and I'm a guy that gets confused too easily. So the momentary one is the thing for me. Okay, so you pick the switch and they positioned to where the function is going to be. So the down arrow, it's with it pulled towards you.
Instructor has control.
And the function is trainer. So of all of these functions that are in there, you select trainer. And so it says when the switch is pulled towards you, it's in the training function where the trainer has control. Value, axis, just simply means that all of the sticks are going to be operating. The other option that you might use is channels, and that's where not just the joysticks, but all of the channels that are being operated with switches, landing gear, flaps, smoke, parachute, whatever else it might be, everything is going to work. Everything is going to get sent across. With axis, it'll just be the control inputs that are on the stick channels. They can get affected by rates and other things, but it's just the flight controls, basically, that are coming across. Okay, so we pick axis. And then you've got to enable it. So in order for it to work, it's got to be enabled. Okay, and then I just have it play a track. When the student is control, the student is control track. When the instructor is control, the instructor control track. Okay, so now that we've got that, let's just go back to our model setup here at the start. And you've got three different things down here. So internal RF, that is going to be what's receiving a signal from the student radio. Okay, so multi-module is a module that we're going to use. DSM RX, you have to use an item here that has RX behind it. So you've got a few of them that are available. You got Banyan RX, whatever that is. You got DSM RX. You've got First Sky. Actually, you got FS2A RX, then you got First Sky RX, and I think that's basically it. So those are the options that you've got, and for me, like most of our radios are Spectrum or 4-in-1 module Radiomasters, so the DSM is the one to use. Okay, RF protocol, just leave it as multi, not sure what those other ones do. And then down at the bottom is where you're going to pick a receiver number and to bind it. Now keep in mind, as you see all these different models that I have on here, keep in mind that this binding is not with a plane, it's with the transmitter, okay? So whichever plane I might be training with, if I'm bound to the same transmitter, it's going to have the same number here. There's just going to be one type of binding between the student radio and the instructor radio for two given radios. If I've got a third person that's flying a different radio and they want to bind, then that'll be a separate binding. But for this, any radio, like take these two radios here. For these two radios, if these two radios are the actual radios that I'm going to use, no matter what plane I'm flying with the instructor radio, if the student radio is being linked up to that, it's just this one receiver number. So whether it's the Walrus trainer, the Ranger trainer, whatever it might be, it's going to be using that binding. Okay, so we do the normal binding. You go into your student radio, get that ready to bind in the internal RF. You have this one ready to bind. You get this one going, as if it was a receiver blinking. Then you hit bind on the other one, they're bound. So that's the internal RF. External RF is what's being used for the plane, and so this works just like the internal RF. Just think like you're flying a normal plane. You're going to pick whichever mode you're going to use, and it's going to be bound with a plane just like normal. And That one probably should be different than that other trainer. But anyway, yeah, just like normal. Okay, so with the external RF. So that's just binding this transmitter to a plane just like normal. And then the other special function that we have for the trainer is we've got to pick what type of thing we're doing here. So master multi is where the master radio is using the multi-module to communicate with the student radio. And as we said before, if you were using the S-bus module for the external module, then you don't turn on this external RF. You have that turned off. And then it would show up over here. Okay, so that is all of the settings that you need for being able to fly. And so then you're all set. If you've got some ideas as to what has gone wrong for me with this little guy here, this might be a pretty good solution for people that want to work with Spectrum people at a very low cost. That might be a good option. But the more flexible one is just simply use the Radiomaster 4-in-1 module. Well, I'm RC Jim signing off. I hope this has been helpful, and maybe that there can be some help coming from your way as to some of these things. You have a great day and enjoy all your flying and related things.